Hi guys, this is Ane from Anything for Geeks, and today we are going to talk about two related species to us, Homo floresiensis and Homo luzonensis. And these two species are special because they were tiny. And let's get started. So this episode is the first time that we've ever talked about, creatures like humans and, hominids, animals in the genus Homo, which means that they are very closely related to us, although they may not look so similar to us on the outside, they certainly are on the inside. And today I want to start off with a quick introduction about people and just the basic genus Homo. So our genus split off from chimpanzees about 13 to 7 million years ago. Scientists are not exactly sure when this actually happened. It could have happened between those 6 million years. But we do know that our lineage does split from the chimpanzees, at least from 7 million years ago. And from that we still have a lot of chimpanzee-like, apes, still in the trees, not so comfortable on ground, don't use tools, no language, a basic social structure, but nothing more. In all words, our lineage just still consists of apes. But fast forward 4 million years, and you get apes walking on the ground. Sure, they still look like chimpanzees, but at least their posture is like humans. Fast forward another 2 million years, and then you got and we've got people that look like modern people walking on in Africa. And it's from these people that a strange lineage, an offshoot from the human lineage arose, and that lineage led to Homo floresiensis and Homo luzonensis. And so, quick backtrack to 1.8 million years ago. We had, a human species called Homo ergaster, also referred to as Homo erectus, and that it was just living its life. And then, the Ice Age comes, and in the north, it just turns everything to ice. Everything is cold, it's perpetually winter. But in Africa, it actually gets hotter and not colder because it gets dry, there's no rain, and so there's no humidity, and so it appears as if it's getting hotter. And so, Homo ergaster or Homo erectus had to leave Africa 1.8 million years ago in search of better lands with better resources. And Homo erectus is mainly the name that we use for the Homo ergaster that migrated out of Africa and into Asia. Homo erectus found its way to India and Southeast Asia, from where Homo erectus lived in Indonesia and just generally the Malayan archipelago. Just all of Southeast Asia was inhabited by Homo erectus. Some Homo ergaster stayed in Africa, and they would be important later on. More on that later. And some Homo ergaster went out of Africa, and they went on to Central Asia, and those were called Homo georgicus. They were found in the country of Georgia. And some went on into Europe, and these were called Homo antecessor. But we'll cover more on them and the subject later. Now, our primary focus is Homo erectus in Asia, specifically Indonesia and the Philippines. And here's where things get strange. So you see, Indonesia is an island country. Indonesia is composed of Sumatra and Java, which are like these two big islands, and then there's like a lot of mini islands, many islands because like they're like tiny islands. And Flores is one of those tiny islands, and on Flores, Homo erectus got there, but then Homo erectus was isolated on a very a tiny island, with very little resources. And here, evolution did something strange, but it's actually something common. It's called island dwarfism, where you get two closely related species. One is on the mainland and one lives on a small island. And the one living on the small island is usually way smaller than the one that lives on the mainland. We've seen examples of this in dinosaurs, and this happened in Homo erectus too, where it actually de-evolved its its grabby hands, and it became just smaller with smaller brain sizes. And here we have something that's called Homo floresiensis. And in the Philippines, the similar thing happened. Homo erectus in the Philippines, on the small islands, they too gradually shrunk and lost some of their features, grew new features, new abilities to adapt to their tiny environment. And actually, the islands are like mini environments or like mini ecosystems where everything's a copy of the mainland ecosystem, but everything's tinier. And with Homo floresiensis and Homo luzonensis, this happened because all the other animals that these two people lived with, there were also tinier counterparts of their mainland mainland cousins. For example, on Flores, we have an ancient elephant, which is extinct unfortunately, called Stegodon, and we know the Stegodon was hunted by H. floresiensis, but H. floresiensis was small, and the Stegodons were also tinier than their mainland counterparts, and we have an example of this in the Cretaceous period on an island called Hadzeg in Central Europe, but we'll have a video on that later. It's actually a paradox because the things that were large on the mainland became tiny, and the things that were small on the mainland became huge. But more on that later. But a very similar thing happened in the island of Flores and the Philippines. And one fun fact about this is Homo floresiensis lived. Actually, it probably could have had contact with humans, but this is still very unlikely. But the interesting thing is, on Flores, there have been legends, and not just on Flores, but on the whole of Indonesia, there are legends from the local people of an ape-like creature about 4 feet tall, covered in shaggy short reddish hair, that walks like a man and talks in barks and grunts. And the Indonesians call it the orang pendek. And the orang pendek in many ways is pretty similar to Homo floresiensis, so this could either be the result of early contact between humans and Homo floresiensis, and the tails just happen to pass down for a very, very long time. Or it could be that the orang pendek still lives, and we just don't know it because, no one's just ever found it. And this actually is very common. The orang pendek is a downsized version of, North America's Bigfoot and Sasquatch and, the Himalayan Yeti. And we find primates all over the world, like primate myths obviously, we find primates in Africa, excluding humans, because humans have pretty much made it to every continent, including Antarctica, because scientists have set up research stations on Antarctica. Back to Homo floresiensis, there's obviously a chance that these animals could be the legendary orang pendek, but we'll still have to tune in for that. And Homo luzonensis was also pretty similar, and so it is likely that a lot of legends about primates, primate like ape men, originate from contact with early hominids, just stuff like that. And in when Homo floresiensis was discovered, researchers were astonished by its tiny size, and people actually thought that it was a human with a strange case of dwarfism and a bit of arthritis, because they had never found anything so small before. People had found Australopithecines, but this was just too human-like. So people actually thought that it was a human, but it was like a dwarf. And they were partially right. It was a dwarf and it was a human, but it was not a Homo sapiens with a physical disability. It was just how evolution worked. And because of their diminutive size, Homo floresiensis, and this can also be applied to Homo luzonensis. Homo floresiensis was called the Hobbit in honor of the race of dwarfs that inhabit the Middle Earth of J.R.R. Tolkien's literary universe, but more on that later. Anyway, the Hobbit, as they're called, exhibit some very weird traits, but we know that they are actually very recent in human evolutionary history, and this is why they're very strange. One, their wrists aren't very well developed, and this could be a backtrack in evolution where an animal does not need a particular feature and it just goes back. With a linear model, it's easier to understand. It's not scientifically correct, and I do not like it. But just to keep things simple, we could metaphorically say that Homo floresiensis just kind of de-evolved its wrists because its ancestors, like Homo ergaster and Homo erectus, had perfectly functioning hands and wrists, and they could grasp as well as we could. Even their ancestors, like Homo habilis, are named for their hands. Like Homo habilis means handyman because apparently it was able to make all of these tools, but we actually don't know who made those tools because we can never know. More on that later. But anyway, the thing is, Homo floresiensis wrists aren't as well developed as its contemporaries or its ancestors, which means that evolution had to take a step backwards because otherwise the Homo floresiensis was pretty much isolated. It didn't need a lot of complex tools, hostility against other species, stuff like that. In Homo luzonensis, the stuff is pretty similar as well. And Homo luzonensis was only very recently discovered. It's actually the sister species of Homo floresiensis, and we hadn't really found much of either of them. Like Homo luzonensis, we just found it because of some fragments from a jaw and a few teeth, and we have a partially complete skeleton from Homo floresiensis, and we're lucky to get that, but there isn't much material for either of them. But there's still enough material to recognize that these two species are very closely related, and their geographic distance doesn't mean much. And they're actually pretty close, even considering geographically. Like the Philippines are pretty close to Indonesia. And it is probable that one may have evolved from the other, and like, there could have been like one big straight line to Homo floresiensis, and then just one offshoot just led to Homo luzonensis in the Philippines, or vice versa, like Homo luzonensis line, and then an offshoot of Homo floresiensis. But they're still, we know that they're very closely related, and they're also very interesting animals. And further research is still being continued into this, as they are still newly found species. And we'll be posting more videos like this about hominids and human evolution. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, please remember to like, subscribe, comment if you can, share this video with your friends, watch more videos on my channel. You might find something that's interesting. And yeah, all of that. Stay tuned for the next video. Bye!